So hello and welcome to our fourth episode of the podcast, and this is a special one. We've got our first guest on, Jack. Some of you may know him as WorkTheSpace, and we're going to be discussing FM, football, and asking some questions about Jack. For those of you who don't know him, he's a YouTuber and streamer who does Football Manager, and he's got 66,000 subs on YouTube, 10.7 thousand Twitch followers, and is the biggest FM YouTuber at the moment. And we're delighted to have you on, Jack.
Yeah, thank you for having me on, guys. It's a pleasure to be your first guest.
Yeah,
Pleasure to have you here.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think just to start off, we just wanted to know how you got into YouTube and Twitch and gaming and got to where you are now, really.
Oh, cool. So yeah, for people who don't know who I am, I'm Jack. Hello. For the longest time ever, I've just been playing video games and playing football. I played, from a young age. I always said I wanted to work in the video games industry, and I started kind of doing some video game editing, video stuff. It actually started out with me setting up a camera in front of my TV on a screen, pointing and recording it. Over a few years, I kind of realised that isn't the best way to do things, and naturally I started doing Football Manager videos during my second year at university, just because you have so much free time at university, so you can take up massive time things like YouTube. And it kind of just grew from there. Like when I started, the FM on YouTube wasn't the biggest thing in the world, but for me, kind of starting my YouTube channel, it was kind of just a way to build up some connections within the games industry. That was kind of one of the main motivators. I never thought it would kind of get to where it is now. And as a result, my YouTube channel, I got a job working on Football Manager, which is obviously what I used to do videos on. And since then, I now work as a cinematic artist. So I do kind of video game trailers and that kind of stuff in my professional life.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, that's really interesting how started off in university, especially.
Yeah, I remember being kind of your guys' age. I didn't know what the hell I wanted to do with my life. I was being told, you got to go to university, you got to do this, you got to do that. And I kind of went to university without knowing exactly what I wanted to do. It kind of, I guess, all fell into place in the end. But I think my YouTube channel definitely kind of gave a sense of direction in terms of what I wanted to do in my life. And as I said, it was kind of during my second year of university, so it was pretty late on the whole deciding what you want to do with your life front.
Yeah.
So how long have you been doing your videos then? So like a few years you've been building up your channel and the Twitch as well?
Yeah, so I started with Football Manager videos back at the start of 2000. I want to say 2013. That feels like so long ago now, like 5 years ago, basically.
Yeah, 5 years ago.
But prior to that, I did stuff like Call of Duty videos on like channels that are now just kind of long hidden away in the archives of YouTube, probably for the best. But they probably go back to when I was younger than you guys. So I was probably about 14 or 15 when I first started doing that kind of stuff. Really didn't know what I was doing, and at my kind of at my school, my secondary school, we didn't have any kind of multimedia based classes or anything. So all kind of my video editing, Photoshop work was all kind of self-taught over a number of years until I went to university. So yeah, FM YouTube about 5 years, but prior to that, probably the best part of 10 years, just general little bits and bobs just related to video games and video editing and such.
So why Football Manager, do you think? What kind of drew you to making around Football Manager, not the other games that you've mentioned? Is just you really enjoy the game, or like kind of into football as well?
I always played Football Manager, and actually during my first year of university, I did a Football Manager video which I sent around to a few people. I did one video and I sent it around to a few YouTubers. Didn't get any response. It's kind of funny now looking back at it, because it's a few of them who I now talk to quite regularly. And so I thought,
talk to you now,
no one wants to watch these videos, so I'm not going to do them anymore. So I did one video and then kind of unlisted it and hid it forever. So I had considered doing Football Manager, but really there just wasn't a big audience for it. When I started at the start of 2013, I think the biggest channel maybe had 1,500 subscribers. I feel like Football Manager is quite different to a lot of other video games, because when I started, Call of Duty was kind of in its peak in terms of YouTube.
Yeah,
it's kind of one of the big games on YouTube as a whole. But Football Manager just didn't have anywhere near that kind of presence. And this was kind of pre-FIFA becoming quite big as well. Which obviously you look at FIFA now, you'd consider that one of the kind of hot games on YouTube that people like to watch.
I think.
See, yeah, that was kind of the reason I started was because I realised during my second year of university, spending about 20 hours a week playing Football Manager, I might as well be doing something productive whilst I'm playing these 20 hours.
Actually, it's interesting you mentioned actually. I kind of started watching Football Manager on YouTube a couple of years ago. And even I remember when I started watching it, you didn't have nearly as many subscribers. I think recently it has really gone up. I know, like I watch Dr. Benji as well, and he's started to go up as well, kind of at a similar rate as you. So like I guess kind of you in particular and him have kind of started to make Football Manager more mainstream, maybe would you say?
I think part of it is the fact that Football Manager has quite an older player base. So a lot of the people who play Football Manager tend to be people, in their 20s and 30s, as opposed to being your guys' age. You guys are probably at the younger side of things. I think people get kind of surprised by that.
Yeah.
And I think actually,
Yeah,
you kind of look at YouTube as a whole. It's only really started becoming kind of mainstream, something that adults might even consider watching in the last kind of 2 or 3 years. And I feel like naturally Football Manager's kind of ridden off that. People are now aware that Football Manager videos exist, whereas kind of 5 years ago, I don't necessarily think that was the case, particularly with the kind of age group who typically play Football Manager. I think the other thing is people probably, even if you play Football Manager, you might think the first time you hear about it, wait, there's people who talk over this spreadsheet game that I play? Like, how can that be entertaining? Whereas, I think people who do give it a go, I'm sure there's some people who just don't get it, but a lot of the people who do watch it, you quickly become invested into people's like series and such.
It's very addictive.
Yeah,
most certainly.
It's probably the most addictive game I've played.
I think
Yeah,
I've
I
had
do agree.
sleepless nights playing Football Manager. You always tell yourself sort of one more game, don't you? One more game, and then suddenly you're halfway through, or you've even finished the season. It's just incredible, and it's like 4 a.m. It's just so easy to do that.
Yeah, and like especially like we did like our exams like recently in the summer, and I think all of us kind of spent a bit too much time playing Football Manager instead of actually watching people.
It was a bad time to get addicted.
I started a Wickham career mode and I was in the championship. I was like, this can't go on, so I just had to delete it and then I re-downloaded it after we finished.
I mean, that's pretty like hardcore. I feel like I wish I had that self-discipline. I just don't. I remember when I think it was Football Manager 2014 came out. I was just kind of starting out with streaming on Twitch, and I did a Wolverhampton Wanderers save during the beta weeks. Obviously, there's like the Football Manager beta. The first few weeks the game's out. Mm-hmm. And I remember I had a reading week at university that week. So what I was doing was I was playing Football Manager, probably streaming it for like 14 hours a day. Like it was pretty bad at this point. How much I was doing. It was probably unhealthy. My sleeping pattern was definitely ruined. But I remember between games and stuff when I wasn't streaming, I'd be sat there like doing my reading. Yeah, it's kind of like my life just became. It's like I've got no other responsibilities this week, so I'm just going to sit down, on this reading week and read lots of Football Manager. But no, I do know that feeling. I definitely think it has had an adverse effect on my life in the same time. I have a lot to be grateful for when it comes to Football Manager. I might be one of the few cases of someone who can look at Football Manager and go, actually, I did get something out of it for those hours that I put in on a virtual monitor.
It's all worked out in the end, yeah.
My parents hate it because I spend so much time on it. My dad's like, by an exam season, he was like, Angus, you're not playing on it anymore. You spend so much time on it because it's what it does to you, isn't it? You get on there, and you just can't stop.
No, it's difficult. It's really difficult.
It's probably one of the most addictive games I know of, just because you get so immersed into this sort of like league and the world that you're in. It's just such a good game.
Yeah, we also have one of our teachers actually plays Football Manager on the regular and actually watches quite a bit of FM YouTube.
Yeah,
he loves it.
It's pretty funny that I know a few stories for Sports Interactive about professional footballers at the lower leagues who I know watch Football Manager videos on YouTube because their club don't allow them to play the game in their own time when they're a professional footballer because they just spend too much time on it.
Yeah, it's understandable.
I find pretty amusing. It's kind of how they get their fix, the videos. I think that is the case for some people. I know there's some people who just kind of don't quite get into a Football Manager save for a while, and sometimes YouTube's kind of the substitute for that. I like to. The nice thing about Football Manager videos is you can kind of have them on as background noise a lot of the time whilst you're doing other stuff. You don't have to be kind of staring at it all the time to know what's going on.
Yeah, I've heard you say that in some of your streams before. You kind of, I remember you like do something. You're like, right, if you're listening, come and look at the stream now because this is happening. I've seen you do that before. And I haven't had on my I've seen you run amazing stuff like this. Yeah, totally agree with that.
So your first Football Manager, Jack, was what? 2013? Did you say?
So 2013 was when I started doing YouTube videos.
YouTube, right? Okay.
Shocking confession here. The first football management game I ever played was LMA Manager 2000, and I think it was 2001.
Okay.
The PlayStation 1.
Right.
So,
okay.
Yeah, because they used. Yeah.
I mean, I just didn't have a PC. Like my parents maybe had Pong on the PC, or like Breakout, the game that you have to destroy all the bricks and keep the ball in the air.
Yeah.
And then I remember I started playing an online game called Sunday League, which is very old at this point. I think it might even still be running, but that was like early 2000s. Then I discovered Championship Manager, and I think 2003. And then, no, I think 2003 I stole off my half-brother. The first one I owned was 2004, because I remember it having the 2D match engine was new for 2004. So that was like the big thing on the box was, brand new 2D match engine. So, oh my gosh, I don't have to read like essay after essay anymore. I don't have to imagine it in my head. I can see these dots that I can imagine instead.
Yeah. So sort of, how have you found that the game sort of changed over the years since you started playing it then?
See, it's really weird because every year I see people complain the game either isn't changed. There's lots of people. There's people who complain it doesn't change enough. The people who complain it's changed too much.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
it's hard to find a balance, isn't it?
Every year I read about people saying, "Oh, I've gone back a game because I didn't like this year's." I try and go back a game and I just don't like it anymore.
No,
I always
really,
enjoy the changes that they add. Like I'm not one of these people who's like super sentimentally attached. Like a Football Manager a few years ago. It's kind of weird for me because I played a lot of Football Manager when I first discovered it, and I don't know how I was playing the game aged 11 or 12. Like I must have not known what was going on half the time. I'll be honest. Yeah. Back to continue. And actually, during my secondary school years, I kind of slowed down a little bit with it, and then it was kind of sixth form. I think was when I was like, oh my gosh, you can kind of see my hours on Football Manager slowly ramp up around that period of my life in university. I really should do that at some point. Is just plot the hours I've played on the game according to Steam on a graph and just see how my life's deteriorated over the years.
Has it sort of been?
Sorry,
go on, finish, mate, please.
Oh, I was just going to say, like in terms of how it's changed each year, I always feel like it's changing for the better. I'm someone who likes the nitty gritty details. I know for some people now coming to the game as a new player, it's just madness. Like, where do you begin with it all? And I kind of empathise, I think, for new players coming in. But because I've played it every year for 14 years, it's kind of lots of little changes at a time don't make it as daunting a task, I guess, each year.
Yeah, I remember my first Football Manager actually was the FM15 because you all know this more than me, but they added the online feature around. It might have been like the game or a couple of games before that, but it really peaked around then, sort of the online feature of it where you could play online with your friends and get them in and like take over careers yourself. And honestly, I mean, I was just an absolute tactical mess when I began. You're right. You just don't know where to look.
I remember.
Like, now, obviously, we've sort of, I wouldn't say we've mastered the game, but you're aware of like most of the features. But like, I remember the first time I played it, it's just like madness. It's like someone's been sick in the Matrix. You just like it's unbelievable. I
think Harry actually, me and Harry actually started playing Football Manager around the same time.
Yeah.
I remember we did
me too as well.
Yeah. And we all started like around the same time.
Me and Ryan started a career, didn't we?
Yeah, and we were a total mess. I think we did an online one as well where we were all in the relegation zone with pretty decent.
It was about halfway through the season, Jack, and I think that career was quickly sacked off and never spoken.
At least you're all mutually like able to cancel it. There's nothing worse than when you're doing well in a network game and a few of your friends aren't doing quite so well and they're kind of getting bored of it.
It's funny you speak of that, Jack, actually, because there was this one career mode, and I'm going to shame.
I know what you're talking about.
Oh no,
this is brilliant. So I don't know if you've seen these before, Jack, but basically there's like these careers where you sort of you basically like have a worldwide like draft, right? No limits. So you use the in-game editor to like move players about. Like, okay, you create squads of 20 players each, right? So there's 4 of us. So like you bin everyone apart from like a couple of players from like top clubs. So we took over like Arsenal, Man City, Chelsea, Man United. I think it was the top 4, right?
Yeah.
So Roham's at Chelsea. Roham's a Chelsea fan, as you can tell by the Courtois image, and he takes the Chelsea hot seat. And it was during the Mourinho disaster season. So obviously he'd be keen to avoid a repeat of this. And one of our friends was actually, so Rohan had a terrible season. I think he won 3 of the first 20 games. It was just, I'd never seen anything like it.
I got sacked before then.
Yeah, I mean, he got sacked about halfway in, but the most funny thing about it is one of our friends, so you get the points target when you're like on the verge of getting sacked, and he needed to win the last game against one of our friends. He was at home. Our friend was controlling Arsenal. He had Chelsea. And he just gets beat 2-1 in the 89th minute. And it's just the most iconic career mode I think we've ever remembered. It's funny because, like you mentioned, like we were flying and he was like down in 17th, and we occupied the top 3 places in the league. But you're right, we did. It gets boring, doesn't it, for like the other people? Like if you're doing really badly and then the other 3 are doing really well, it's like, come on, what are these guys doing that I'm not? Do you know what I mean? It's like,
although I think like those kinds of things can like, I'm pretty sure I scripted it. I can't really see Paul Pogba playing, 5.5s game in, game out. But I think there was also one other sort of freak thing that happened in our saves, which was Harry actually. he had a bit of an issue with Sunderland in particular.
So
I think everyone has an issue with Sunderland, though. To be fair. As a place, not just as a club.
Yeah.
So what happened? Jack, to give you context.
Football Manager, so
what happened was, when you get the like beta when it comes out, so the game's not properly finished, right? So we started a career mode before then, and Sunderland had basically what was going on is like the top 6 had like proper managers, and then all the rest of the other clubs had like former players because the managers hadn't loaded into the database. So Sunderland had Roy Keane managing them, right?
Tactical genius.
The tactical genius himself from his time there. So I go to Sunderland. I'm having a blinder. I'm rubbing it in the guys' faces. I've played 12 matches. I've won 11. I've drawn 1 away to Man United. So quite a tough game. They were in second. And, just keep all the tactics the same. Everything's working well. 7-1 defeat. Right?
That's brilliant.
Now, that was bad enough. Okay, that was bad enough. I didn't really know where to start. Wahib Khazri stuck 3 past me, right? I mean, I was a bit concerned at that point, okay? So then we actually go into the full game, the proper game. And there might have been less of us in this career mode. There might have been like 2 or 3 of us as opposed to about 5 who were in the first one. I played Sunderland again. And, it was like a mental block for me, this, because I'd just been smashed by them last time, and I'm thinking, right, I cannot lose again. I have to get something out of this game. I've never seen such a like Football Manager game in my life. I lost that one 6-2, I think, but they were just streaming forward, playing like Barcelona-esque football, and there was just nothing I could do about it. I'd never seen anything like it on the game. It was absolutely incredible. But yeah, like, sometimes, I don't know, I just question what is actually going on in the game, because like I don't really know how you can get 11 wins out of 12, play lovely football, and then that just goes and happens. Like I remember at the time I was absolutely convinced it was scripted. I thought the game had some sort of agenda against me, but no, it wasn't good timing for me. It wasn't very good.
I mean, it sounds like a traumatic time. I feel like we're helping you through this now with some kind of...
You most certainly are. Talking about it has really helped me to overcome this. But no, it was terrible, Jack. I'm not going to lie. I'm struggling to speak about it even now, but it was not a good experience.
I feel like I had an experience, I want to say it was last year, and I think fortunately this wasn't a save that I was like documenting in video or stream format, but I won the first leg of the Capital One Cup semi-final as Liverpool against Spurs 6-1. So I thought, in my infinite wisdom, well, I'll just rotate the team for the second leg, 6-1, easy. Lost that second leg 8-0 and crashed out the semi-final. I think that may have also been in the beta. I have to empathise really with Football Manager because I have worked testing the game, and the sad reality is you have like 80 people test the game for 9 months. Within the first 3 hours of the game being out in beta on Steam, the total number of hours played by everyone who's bought the game is higher than the 100 people who tested it prior to its release. Yeah. And because the thing with Football Manager, unlike other games, is it isn't like a linear story from start to finish. It's kind of like it's a bit like a real world experiment, where you kind of have a little big bang that goes off, and everyone's big bang's the same, but everything else that happens around it is randomized and different. Yeah. So it's never ever going to be the same. So it's almost impossible to like see every eventuality.
That's one thing that's quite popular on YouTube. There's a lot of videos of like, what if so and so club got like 100 million. I love those experiments on YouTube. They're really interesting.
See, they're kind of interesting because I've done a few of them, and I said I was going to do more for this year's Football Manager, and I probably should do more. They're kind of good, I think, around the summer, when the football season starts to quieten up a little bit, the views start declining. Obviously, with the World Cup this year, fingers crossed, that won't come quite as soon.
I think we all know it probably will, but you got to have that hope.
I mean, the season's over already. Man City have won. But...
Yeah, we'll get on to that.
But I don't know. Yeah, the experiments are kind of interesting because I think they're the kind of videos that appeal to people who don't necessarily even play Football Manager. Like, if you don't care about Football Manager, it can still be kind of interesting to go, oh, what would happen if Messi and Ronaldo swapped? And obviously, it's never going to happen in real life. The next closest thing is probably Football Manager's database in terms of something that could produce I don't want to say realistic results because I feel like realistic is perhaps giving it too much credit, but plausible results as to what might happen.
Yeah. So, this year, Jack, with the game, how tactical have you because they've made these changes, haven't they? Like the new tactical briefs. How tactical have you found it's become?
So the tactical briefs, to be honest, I used a little bit to begin with, but I've kind of just
don't use
them.
Yeah.
I feel like it's an example of one of those things. I think it reminds me of stuff like that we've seen before, where it's kind of the first iteration of something isn't necessarily the finished product. It's about getting something in the game that can be elaborated on in the next few iterations of the game. I feel like you kind of look at certain features in Football Manager, stuff like scouting and how that's changed over the last few years.
Yeah.
The medical centre and how that's changed. For example, the sports scientists and stuff like last year was the first implementation of them. It was very bare bones and basics, but they were there. You don't necessarily kind of know exactly what's going on, but it was something there. And then this year's been built upon. I feel like the tactical briefs are an example of that kind of thing where it's their first iteration into Football Manager. It's kind of a general outline. And hopefully, over the next few years, as is the case of everything in Football Manager, and I hope with everything in Football Manager, you're going to continue to see all different elements of the game continue to advance. And I feel like adding in more of these little elements that might not have a big impact to begin with, and then scaling up their impact as they become more fleshed out and polished, is kind of a better approach than sticking something in the game which has this massive influence but hasn't really been properly considered. And also, you don't know for certain people are going to use. You could put all that work into getting something like that working, but if everyone sets it for their assistant to use, is it worth putting resources in to develop that feature, or is it worth looking at what people might want instead?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I just give it the assistant as well. It doesn't really have a significant impact for me, but I think you're right. It's sort of like a step in the right direction for them. But you're right, they'll develop it properly over coming games. I think it'll become a significant feature.
Yeah. Also, I had just one question to ask. I mean, obviously, you're more of an experienced Football Manager player. What tips would you give to people our age? Because we've got quite a few friends and listeners who are Football Manager players. What tips would you give to us from your standpoint, just to improve our game as a whole?
I think the one thing that people do too much is try and overcomplicate things when it comes to tactics. Like, it's perfectly okay to have a tactic that only has 2 custom instructions on. Yeah. But you don't have to have every box either green or red for a tactic to be a good tactic.
I'm absolutely obsessed with doing 26 instructions. Just they've got to be clear what they've got to do.
I try and always do some sort of weird 3 sticks 1 Barcelona style tactic, and then it never works out. I just end up going back to 4-4-2 or something.
Yeah, I feel like people try and overcomplicate it a little bit, especially with player roles as well. I feel like player roles, you have to look at them as preset instructions for the player, even the role itself. Mm-hmm. And those preset ones are the ones that the game, obviously, the AI uses more frequently. Of course, it will use individual instructions, but there is no harm in not having any custom player instructions on whatsoever. Of course, if you've got a centre mid who has terrible long shots, maybe telling him to shoot less often is a good instruction. But you don't have to tell every single player move into channels, get wide, run wide with ball, etc. Less is more in a lot of ways. And if you play a few games with not many instructions and notice a few trends that you want to change, then consider adding instructions rather than changing so many different things and then not knowing which are the problem bits of the tactic as well.
That's good advice. I like that.
Yeah, agreed.
What's your favourite tactic that you've used this year, formation? Then obviously you must have to go through a lot of different ones, try a lot of different ones because you play it so much. I guess you find that the real top one. So what would you say has been your favourite one this year?
So I know that the best one this year, I've not used it yet because I feel like it's too good in the match engine.
We'll all be using this now.
It is a three centre backs, 2 inverted wing backs, 2 centre mids, and 3 centre forwards. Is that the right number of players? Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
I was trying to make sure I said the right system there. But yeah, I think those are people using 3 complete forwards on support.
Right.
And inverted wing backs also seem really good for like getting in narrow. It seems like wide formations aren't quite as good this year. But yeah, the thing in Football Manager is the defending AI always has issues with 3 strikers, just because it doesn't seem, it's a really hard thing to program, obviously, but getting 4 defenders and teaching the fullbacks to pick up, the third striker who's on their side, and like as the ball's switched across to them, it will move across the defenders but stay marking. Like, it doesn't really work that well. And so if you have 3 complete forwards on support, you all drop into space. It seems very, very strong at the moment. And part of that with inverted wing backs, which I feel like Football Manager always struggles with narrower systems. I think the exception to that was maybe FM15, I want to say, where the fullbacks were really overpowered and got like 25 assists.
Yes. I remember that.
But pretty much every Football Manager kind of narrow systems are always pretty solid. But this year it seems like it's really good.
Yeah, for that 4-3-1-2 formation.
I don't know if you tried it, Jack.
Ridiculous.
I did an Invincibles with it.
I feel like the reason I didn't use it is because I used it the previous year loads. Like, it was one of those tactics that I used quite a lot because I always felt like a 4-1-2-1-2 with kind of a diamond midfield never quite worked as well because the 2 wider centre mids would never, the 2 centre mids playing alongside each other never really went wide and like helped you out your fullbacks. Whereas now there's the new Carrilero role, which kind of helps with that a little bit. I've not actually had a chance to test it myself, so I just have to assume it works reasonably well in that kind of situation. But yeah, 4-3-1-2 is really, really good. In Football Manager in general. Any narrow system tends to do pretty well.
Yeah, but I remember also I remember like as you mentioned, like in FM15 or something, when the wing backs and stuff were overpowered. Like, I have a weird anecdote about that. I started a career, I think it was with Chelsea. I bought Danny Rose and Kyle Walker. Those were my only 2 signings over like 3 seasons. And in those 3 seasons, Kyle Walker got 8, 6, and 4 assists, and Danny Rose got 48, 52, and 43 assists.
I used to love that. He always waxes lyrical about him.
Danny Rose is brilliant, I think.
I mean,
he's one of the best left backs in Europe, I think.
I feel like Football Manager always gets you those weird attachments to footballers you really shouldn't care about. So for me, one of them is Carlos Fierro, who is a Mexican forward who I think would have been FM12 maybe. Like, he was like a -9 potential ability, so a really good striker. He started at Chivas in Mexico, and in real life he just won the Under-17s Mexico World Cup. And every year, even now he's still pretty good, but every year for about 3 years he still had this really high potential, and every year I'm sort of thinking, you're not going to have it for much longer. And it's kind of sad now because I think he's age 23 or 24, and I think he's got something like 6 league goals in 100 league games in Mexico.
No.
And it's just one of those careers where it's just never going to happen for him. But in my heart, he's still got a special place. And actually, I think it was Griezmann this year who, prior to Football Manager coming out, some footballers get the game early. He was one of the players who got it early. He was tweeting out a picture of him signing Fierro for Marseille.
I saw you tweet that actually. I think I saw you tweet about that.
So that brought a little tear to my heart, but he doesn't even load up now unless you load Mexico. So now when I start saves, there is this temptation every time to just tick the Mexico tick box in case one day the opportunity presents itself to bring it home.
Yeah.
Although there's also one attachment. I mean, I think it's the opposite for Angus here. We actually did a career.
I know what this is.
In like an Icelandic career with like a draft, right?
Oh.
It was actually inspired by your Advent Calendar series last year, and what happened is that my first signing was Yarmolenko, because I got Y, and I won. I think it was 6-1 against Angus. Yarmolenko getting 4 goals, and I think he ended up being top scorer, and I don't think Angus is. I think Angus shudders at the name.
what we do to him, Jack.
But how can I say? When I went this season, I went to Wembley to I don't know if you remember, like scored an absolute screamer. I remember thinking, oh god, when I get back, I'm going to take the piss out of me for that one because Yarmolenko just scored against again.
Yeah.
Dortmund.
Yeah.
That was hilarious.
And I think there was one more. We did like a keepers draft as well. We did a keepers draft, and I think I signed up Copper to play in centre mid for me. Top scorer, top assister, got 5 goals and 3 assists against one of our listeners, George, in an 8-1 win. Been a bit of a cult hero since.
Yeah, it was funny.
So it's funny attachments, isn't it? Like he probably has nightmares about Copper after that game. It's absolutely incredible. Just one more thing, Jack, before we move on from Football Manager onto sort of football in general. Me and Rohan were talking about this earlier, sort of features that we like to add to the game, potentially. Yeah. So do you want to go first, Rohan, or do you want me to explain mine? And then we'd like to hear what you'd sort of add on to that, Jack.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll just quickly explain what I'd add to it. I think one thing I'd add is that when you kind of get into the manager hot seat, I think one of the first things that you do, because you get into the summer, you think transfers. I would just say making transfers a bit more immersive, to be honest, and adding in more steps so you can see it, step by step, rather than just suggest terms and then sometimes they just give you a ridiculous £200 million fee and you can never negotiate again.
They've done it a bit in FIFA, haven't they? They've sort of taken it a bit more to the next level. And obviously, like Jack said earlier, you don't go all the way there, but you sort of make steps towards doing something. So you add in a new feature, which is probably quite niche, and maybe after a while it doesn't become relevant, but eventually it'll become a big part of the game. And I think that's what they did in FIFA. And I think that's a good idea in Football Manager, actually. That would be a good feature to add.
Yeah, although I got to commend them, the clauses are pretty good. There's a lot of options there. I quite like that.
Yeah, I do like that.
I kind of wish negotiations were more drawn out. There's something new that I think started happening last year or this year. I've noticed it a bit more this year, which is you make an offer for a player, contract-wise, when another club's bidding on him, and he'll come back to you after a week and say, look, your contract offer wasn't quite good enough, but I want to join your club over the other club who've offered me a contract.
Yeah, I've got that.
This is the offer they gave me. Will you match it, kind of thing? I think with transfers, I think there is more that could be added. I think there's always the risk that you overcomplicate something or over bloat it, so it takes too many clicks and kind of puts people off. I feel like Football Manager is always walking this tightrope with features where it's you don't want to add something that people think changes the game too much or adds a bit too much to it. And one concern I always have with expanding on stuff like transfers is it could end up kind of a bit like interviews, where in media interviews it always becomes a little bit repetitive, a little bit samey and stuff. So I feel like that's always a fine kind of tightrope to walk. Tightrope to walk. Gosh, it's been a long day. Actually. It's kind of interesting, though, because one thing I think that would be better, so obviously in Football Manager, we've seen this kind of split between FM Touch and the main Football Manager game, where it's kind of the same game, but obviously what was previously called Classic. I'd quite like to see Football Manager get to a stage where when you start a new game in the main game, there's certain bits that you can turn on and off. So, for example, press conferences, maybe you just don't use them, so you can just turn them off. Or, certain little things that people might just not find that interesting. Now, the issue with that is that each time you have one of these different permutations, if there's 5 different settings that you can just turn on or off, you have to rebalance the game around those. So, for example, press conferences, if you remove press conferences, changing kind of morale and how you might fall out with players or promise players stuff would have to change. And so if you have 5 different tick boxes, suddenly there's 25 different situations where morale has to be handled differently, depending on which different things you have on or off. But no, I definitely think that transfers are something that would be quite interesting to see, taken a little bit further. Even if it was just stuff like making a bigger deal out of being able to declare a public interest in a player.
Yeah.
Make that a little bit more.
Yeah, it doesn't really have that sort of effect that you'd want, does it? It kind of it's too niche at the moment.
Sometimes you can kind of unsettle a player by declaring interest, and then they say, "Oh, I'd love to join your club," and then you put in a bid and it still gets rejected.
Yeah,
and
it just doesn't happen. Yeah.
But it's maybe 1 in 5 times that it actually helps you to get a cheaper deal, or that you really see a real feel for it.
Right. Yeah,
so
I agree.
No, I think something like that could be interesting.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, so moving on, Jack, you are, for those that don't know, in many ways living the dream, because in a survey it said the most you might not know this, but the most popular jobs that children nowadays want to be is number 1 a games number one, a YouTuber, and number two, a games developer. So so for those that don't know, would you briefly explain what your job is and how you work?
Sure. So I work as a cinematic artist on Total War. For people who don't know, Total War is a PC strategy series. Previously it was focused primarily on history. Obviously now there's been the Warhammer titles that have come out lately. Within my role, I am responsible for working on 2D and 3D assets using the game engine to create short trailers, video clips, in-game cutscenes, just that kind of thing, really, anything within that sphere.
Yeah, so I'm the only one here who actually plays Total War, I believe. So I'm the only one who knows. So you'd be responsible for doing stuff like, for example, with Roman Total War, and then there's like a slave uprising. If you were there for that, those sort of like mid-game cutscenes are when something happens.
Yeah, so I wasn't there for that one specifically, but that's the exact kind of thing I work on. So, for example, with the latest Warhammer title, I did some of the front-end videos where you kind of see all the different characters that you can play as, and there's a little portrait video that loops out, that kind of stuff. And also trailers. So I worked on the Dark Elves trailer for Total War Warhammer 2 when that came out last year.
Interesting.
Right, should we move on then, guys? Just generally to talk about football, because we're all passionate football fans here. You're a fan of Liverpool, correct, Jack?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's more unfortunate to be a Liverpool fan than fortunate at the moment, but it's only getting better.
Well, no, it's kind of relevant with what's going on at the moment, actually, because I wanted to ask you about the transfer of Coutinho and what you sort of make of that monstrous fee that's been paid for him. And do you think sort of like transfers nowadays, the fees for them are just being inflated like ludicrously?
Yeah, it's weird. I don't like the fact the fees are as big as they are. I don't really like the fact Coutinho's leaving midway through the season. But
You're going well as well. You've won a lot of games recently. You're on a good run.
I feel like £142 million is just too good to refuse. I feel like the issue with Liverpool has been that over the last few years, certainly the last decade plus when I've been a fan, we've sold players like Mascherano, Sterling, Suarez, Owen. Lots of these players that we built our team around to an extent for big sums of money. I actually feel like the Coutinho transfer, whilst you could draw a lot of parallels between the Coutinho deal and all those deals that I just listed, in terms of a talismanic player moving on, I feel like this is the least detrimental to the squad as a whole in terms of the team isn't entirely built around these, Coutinho the same way it was built around these other players. I don't feel like Coutinho's irreplaceable.
No.
He's had a few injury problems. Lallana's coming back from injury. To an extent, Coutinho was kind of causing us some problems because he was playing out on the left fairly often. It meant that, between Mane and Salah, one of them was having to be rested up with Salah in the form he's in. It was often Mane on the bench. So you got Firmino playing ahead. Yeah. It's looking like for a player like Lallana, how was he going to fit in the team anywhere? I don't know. I feel like whilst we've lost a very key player in Coutinho, Liverpool have been linked with Lamar, who looks like he could be a pretty good signing if that was to happen.
He's amazing.
I hope we get instead of you, because we need him.
I've kind of made peace with the world at the fact that this season, that this half a season now, we might be missing something. So I think it's going to be very difficult to bring in a player of the caliber of Coutinho. Teams just don't want to sell their players at this point in the season.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit disappointed that Coutinho wanted to go so much, but clearly he's kind of forced this move. That's the nature of modern football, unfortunately. I'm sure that the fee that's been agreed wouldn't have been agreed unless Klopp was happy with it, regardless of what Coutinho did. I feel like as a Liverpool fan, it's one of those things where you just kind of have to put trust in the club that it's the right decision and that the money will be spent wisely.
Do you think the Van Dijk transfer is like sort of already digging into that, or do you think it's a separate move?
So that money for Van Dijk, that 75 million, was already talked about in the summer before Coutinho was even really linked with Barcelona that much.
Yeah, that's true.
That said, I feel like you do have to work on the assumption that will take a chunk out of the £142 million we've received. I think the club's already agreed to give every fan who bought a Coutinho shirt at the start of the season £50 of vouchers.
That is good.
So if you assume that's like 20,000 fans that will get that refund thing, which might be a bit generous worldwide, but that's like £1 million. So I feel like ultimately Liverpool will probably spend money Oh, yeah, at least you certainly hope they're going to spend some of that money. I just think to land the right player for a reasonable fee, that money probably isn't going to be spent until next season now.
I saw you. I saw you were linked with Riyad Mahrez. What would you sort of make of that transfer if it was to happen?
I think a lot of it would depend on the fee. Obviously, he's been linked with a few different clubs. He kind of had
Chelsea.
a very quiet spell at the start of the season. This year, he's kind of had a bit more form. It's certainly over the Christmas kind of winter period. I think that's kind of been the nature of Leicester to an extent, really. They had a very slow start to the season. I'd be curious to see how he could play, and hopefully he could do pretty well. Obviously, not going to be cup tied, so he could play in Europe, which could be a fairly big factor.
Of course.
But it really would depend on the fee. I feel like if you're spending more than 30 million on him, I think there's probably better options out there. I'd almost rather we didn't sign anyone and we just picked up Lamar in the summer, if that's the deal.
Just wait for the summer. Yeah.
I do think it's getting to the point where kind of the amount that you pay for a player is gets out of control. I think it's kind of more important just to get the player than how much you pay for him, because we paid 30 million for Sissoko. Okay, and you say 30 million for Sissoko is dreadful. So sometimes I think it's just good to just go out and get the player. Cost a lot because teams have had success with it. I don't know.
Perhaps because
Liverpool have done quite well from it. Like Mohamed Salah and Mane for 30 million each. It's incredible business. You look at it, really.
That's true. But we're looking at getting Mahrez as well, and we don't really need him. But we're still rumored to be going for 60 million or so to try and get Mahrez. And there's a lot of fans on the Chelsea side that want the move to happen. I don't really understand it. Why? I know finances aren't an issue for us. Why you'd spend 60 million on someone that we don't need? Especially considering the dreadful transfer we just made of Barkley as well. I'm not really sure why we'd need to do it.
I don't feel like that's a terrible piece of business, because I feel like you're getting a player who's young, English, homegrown in terms of European standards for £15 million. Realistically, he would have been costing, if he wasn't out of contract, near a 40 million in the current climate, and it's very unlikely you're ever going to sell him for anything less than that. You look at players like Klukas going to Swansea from Hull this year for £14 million in the summer.
Yes.
I don't feel like it's that mental of a transfer, but I can understand that from a fan perspective, the players you bring into your club you want to see kind of immediately make a stamp on the first team, and you do wonder if it might be, I don't want to say it'll be like the Danny Drinkwater one, because I don't think it's fair to judge him due to all the injuries he's had, but
that's true.
You look at Drinkwater as a player who, I don't know, as a Chelsea fan, I feel like he's not necessarily, he wouldn't be a player at the start of the summer you would have been like, yeah, he's the player we must land this season if we want to be successful.
No, definitely.
Yeah, because with Drinkwater, he was more to the start, but he's been all right. But the point is that we did have an open centre mid spot, so it kind of made sense with Chalobah and Matic leaving. But with Barkley, we don't have a spot open in that just behind the striker role, because we've got
deeper
Pedro. I don't really think he's as good there though, because I think he'd be potentially in smaller games like cup games, but if you're thinking like normal league games, I don't think he's defensively good enough to play in that centre mid role.
Yeah, it surprised me as well, because I really wanted Barkley. I thought I'm going to get Barkley. I think he would be really good as kind of a backup to Eriksen, kind of player, because Eriksen plays so much football and runs so much. It'd be good to have someone to come on when he's tired, playing the cup game stuff, which we haven't really got. We haven't got another creator. And I always think it watching Tottenham, I don't know if you guys think it as well, we always need someone around midfield who can pick a pass, and Eriksen's kind of the only person we have, and I think Barkley would be another good player to have. I was disappointed we missed out on him as well, but very cheap as well, only 15 million, so I'm pretty gutted.
That in this climate is that's a really good price. Like you said, Jack, I think that would have been inflated if he wasn't out of contract. And I think just in general, transfer fees these days, they really seem to be inflated by just clubs they're no longer sort of obliged to sell players, particularly really top clubs. They don't have to sell in the climate at the moment, and what that means is you pay these extortionate fees. Like Coutinho, it's an unbelievable fee that they've paid from 143 million. 5 years ago, they wouldn't have been paying more than 40 million, if that. You'd have been laughed at if you said that they'd pay that much for him 5 years ago. It's absolutely ridiculous.
I actually have a good example of that. Actually. I think it was in when Mourinho came in. I think it was like his second season. I think it was his second season anyway. When he was asked how much would it take to let go of Oscar and Hazard, when Oscar was actually relevant. And he said as a joke, 200 million. You think if they were still at the club now, that is not out of the question, is it? And everyone laughed at that at the time. It's only been a few years since, and now it's like, if you say 200 million for Hazard, a team like Real Madrid, they'd probably pay that.
They'd pay that, yeah.
I
think so. Do you think he'll move, Chatters? Do you think there's any chance of him going?
I mean, there were rumours recently, wasn't it? Like, Hazard rejected a contract because he wanted to keep his options open, like in quotation marks.
Yeah, but these players, they're so clever now.
Exactly.
They'll run down their contracts and eventually they'll get the wages that they want. That's exactly like I love Mesut Ozil, right? He's a brilliant player, but you can't tell me for a second that like his camp and what they're doing at the moment with his contract situation at the moment, you can't tell me that they're not playing this like cleverly, trying to get him the best deal possible, because they know he can afford to run his contract down and then he'll get a 20 million signing bonus if he goes to like Manchester United at the end of the season. It's just utterly ridiculous.
Yeah. I mean, I can't see Hazard leaving at the moment anyway. I mean, things could change. If we beat Barcelona and he plays a huge part, maybe Real Madrid will take notice. But at the moment...
Good luck with that one, though, Rohan.
I mean,
you're going to get battered, son.
I'm optimistic, actually. I'm very optimistic with it.
Why don't we move on to it, guys? Why don't we talk about the Champions League sort of predictions for that? How do we see it going?
I just want Chelsea to lose to Barca so that Liverpool can get them, and I can watch Coutinho cry from the stands, battered at the new camp 5-0.
Oh, that'd be brilliant.
That would be amazing.
I would enjoy that.
I've only had a few dreams about that over the last few days. I'll be completely honest.
It's fine. Coutinho will be crying in the stands when Chelsea play Barca. It's fine.
Yeah, but that won't give him the same satisfaction, Chatters, because no one likes Chelsea.
He wants to see Lallana score a hat-trick at the new camp and see Coutinho crying in the stands. That's what he wants.
It's fine. We see Ishi Batshuayi scoring a hat-trick at the new camp.
So Jack,
on a serious note, who do you guys think will win the Champions League? Because there's so many good teams in there. Like, it's incredible, really.
I genuinely, Barcelona have 2 legs.
Barcelona didn't have the legs.
I can't see anyone beating Barcelona over 2 legs.
Over 2 legs. I was going to say, like.
Yeah.
Sorry, my wife. How do you see it going?
I think actually the Coutinho signing probably makes Barcelona favourites now, which might sound a little bit odd because he can't actually play for them. But what it does mean is that Iniesta, who is ageing quite quickly now, bless him, he's now going to be able to rest out all the league games, all the cup games. He will be a Champions League kind of playmaker for them. He's going to be going into every game fresh. And he's just such a core component of how they play. So kind of underrated, I guess, in how they play Iniesta. I feel like, for him, it's such a great kind of situation to be in. But also, I just think you look across their team, you look at how they're performing in La Liga at the moment, it's difficult to see anyone beating them.
True.
Like the game against Real Madrid the other week, I mean, my goodness. They battered them.
Yeah, I know. That was ridiculous.
So messy. It's just... Angus won't like this because he's a big Ronaldo fan, but when I hear him compared to Ronaldo, it irritates me because I think he's just streets above. What do you think, Jack, on the sort of Messi-Ronaldo comparison?
So I feel like comparing individual footballers is always so subjective in terms of what you think makes a great footballer. What I will say is I've not seen Ronaldo play live. I have seen Messi play live, and I got the opportunity to watch him in a live stadium and just watch him only. And what you don't realise when you're watching on TV is he is always in space. He never sprints anywhere. He's just in the space already. Like, he's never rushing to get into position. He's always in the right place at the right time. It's this bizarre thing where, that he's probably been told, the opposition team have been told by like their manager, you've just got to shut him down. But he just still finds these openings and he makes it look so effortless.
Such a clever player, isn't he?
Yeah, you kind of look at Ronaldo and I feel like he relies on his physicality a lot, whereas Messi, yes, he is rapid. Let's not get that wrong. But when you watch him play, when he's finding the opportunities and playing the ball and stuff, he's just so composed about it all. There's no rush. He's able to put himself and find his position, and he knows where everyone is on the pitch in the way it just seems like he's 2 steps ahead of everyone else.
Yeah, I think also his passing is really underrated. I think that's one of his best. Like he's such a good
Such an
passer,
unselfish player, isn't he?
With good vision. Like his vision is incredible, but we have stopped him every single time we've come against him. So
Good luck. I'll tell you what, chatters. The way he's been
won't
playing
this time.
recently. Good luck,
You won't.
seriously.
I mean, I can't lie. I think we have a good chance against them. I wouldn't put us out as just they're out. I think we can definitely get a result. But if they beat us, I think they're going to go on to win it.
Okay.
So Jack, I think you said you were going to tip Barcelona to it, but the first English team who's been in with a shout of winning it this year are Man City. What do you think of them so far this season?
I mean, their perform in the league has been superb. I feel like the way that they play is so good at killing off the little teams that
it's unbelievable.
cause problems for all the bigger teams.
They were actually bad against Bournemouth the other week. Their fans said they were dreadful, and they still won 4-0.
They were.
Yeah. And they'd be laughing.
You're right.
Although they've been close, haven't they? They've been close to losing
A
that.
couple of times, but do you know what? The consistency they've shown is unbelievable. But the thing for me is when you watch them, right, in previous years, I think when you think about Man City, you thought, going forwards, they are incredible, right? They've had that attacking talent, but you think you can get at their defence. You don't really feel like that this year because they defend from the front. They absolutely swarm you. It reminds me of Pep Guardiola Barcelona sides when you played them. It's just incredible. They're all over you. You literally can't get a minute.
I mean, not so much Pep Guardiola's Bayern Munich sides.
No, but they didn't really have the legs.
Yeah,
definitely his
true.
Barcelona side.
Definitely.
Yeah, well, the thing is, this
incredible.
I think they are very beatable because if you get beyond that high press,
I don't think they'll go.
I think their defense
thing
is
is, like their defense now. I mean, when we went to play them at the Etihad, I saw Fabian Delph starting at left back. I was like, right, we're in business. We'll get Ericsson down that side. He can dominate. And it just didn't happen at all. I mean, we were totally outdone in the midfield and
the ball couldn't get
attack.
to him, could it?
And it just didn't get to him. And I was really shocked because we've actually had some joy there in the last couple of years. And even this year, we were totally outplayed by them. We have stepped them. We beat them a couple of years ago. We drew them last year, and we were totally outplayed. And that
I think actually it sounds ridiculous, but I think if they're to go unbeaten, I think a key signing for them would be Alexis Sanchez, because I think that what they're going to try and do is they'll try and wrap the league up as quickly as possible, get it done, right? They want to win the Champions League. There's no doubt in my mind they would rather win the Champions League than go unbeaten in the league. It's not even a question, right? If they get Alexis Sanchez, what people don't realise is he can play for them.
He's not cup-tied.
He's not cup-tied. So they can rotate that massive squad even more.
They got so many attacking options.
How do you see it, Jack? What do you think of their sort of attacking talent?
I think the crazy thing about the City side is they can rotate their team so much and
already,
so much.
Like they've got so much strength and depth, particularly in the final third. Obviously, I feel like the Gabriel Jesus injury is going to be somewhat problematic. There's rumours now that it might be till the end of the season, which could make the Sanchez kind of signing even more critical to an extent. I feel like that was really shown over the Christmas period, to be honest, just how good they can be. Particularly with David Silva, who has had some issues off the pitch.
On the pitch, he's incredible.
Yeah, so he's had some family stuff going on. But obviously he's not been playing very much. And, at the start of last season, you would have said nailed on he was like one of their critical players who they kind of play entirely around. And I feel like they've shown a real kind of class above this year, City, to show that they're not really depending on one of their star players. Yes, De Bruyne is absolutely superb when he plays. But I feel like they can still cope without him, and they have still coped without him, throughout the season, particularly over the Christmas period, where I feel like they have now wrapped up the title.
Yeah, the title's probably done. But I do think to go unbeaten, I don't know how you see it, Jack, but I think they would have to maybe bulk up the squad a bit more, sort of show their priorities towards the Champions League.
I think my big worry for them would actually be the centre-back position. I think that's the one area where if they get a few injuries, in trouble. Stone's out injured at the moment. Company, obviously, we know he has issues with
He looked shaky the other day, Stones. He come back and he made a mistake for the Burnley goal.
I feel like they are one or two in addition to maybe Company getting injured, injuries away from a real issue there. I guess Fernandinho could drop back and play centre-back.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I know they've got Mangala waiting in the wings. I feel like there definitely is a defensive frailty to be found in City. But as you guys have kind of identified, just how good they are going forward makes it incredible. It's near impossible for a team to focus on trying to hit that weakness because you have to try and cover your own weaknesses tenfold again.
Yeah. I don't know how you guys see it, but obviously there's loads of sort of like comparisons between them and Arsenal's invincible side, right?
Oh, I don't.
Okay. I think that Arsenal invincible side is a much more complete engine than the Man City side we've got at the moment. You might disagree. They might have a bit more going forwards in terms of attacking flair. But when you went through that Arsenal team, I don't think there was a real weakness you could identify. And I'm not just saying this as an Arsenal fan, biased, loving.
You are, though.
No, I'm not. If I'm speaking honestly about it, I believe that Arsenal team was more complete than this Man City team at the moment. But, I mean, I'm an Arsenal fan. It's hard for me to be unbiased. I think that the amount of... I do think there are weaknesses in the Manchester City side. I think, like you mentioned, Angus, Delph, right?
Yeah.
I don't think you can... Even though he hasn't been exposed yet and he's come in and he's done a job, I don't think you can get through a season with him. Otamendi, I'm still not convinced by, right? John Stones has always got a mistake in him. I don't think... Like, they could have lost to Crystal Palace the other day very easily.
Should have done.
They weren't
Yeah,
happy.
really should have done.
Really should have. I mean,
deserved
that
to lose.
penalty.
But I don't know how you guys feel about comparisons between them and the Invincibles.
I think it's not really appropriate because
Not until the end of the season anyway.
Yeah,
They're not
because
done anything yet.
first of all, they're so different as teams.
Yeah, of
Second of all, they haven't really done anything. I mean, they're showing signs that they could be that good, but they have to prove it by winning not just the league, but by doing it next year, or by, I don't know, winning the Champions League or getting to the final, or by winning the FA Cup or something.
Things that
I
I really want them to go invincible because Arsenal fans cling on to that one, don't they? They always say, oh yeah, Chelsea are beating us now. We did the Invincibles, in like 03 or 04. So that will kind of, take the track from their cheap talent would be brilliant.
I disagree to a point because I would love to see City potentially have a very average second half of the season because I think they have it in.
So you can win the league. You still think you can win the league?
No, chance. They can have an average second half of the season and still win it with ease.
Yeah, but that shows how good they've been, doesn't it?
Exactly. But I'd really think that's possible because, for example, Delph, he has weaknesses in him, but it's the fact that the wingers, the strikers, the centre mid, win the ball up so high and press you so high that he never even gets the chance to be exposed. Once somebody comes up with a solution to that, one team does it, and it'll just have a knock-on, a bit like us last season with the 13-game winning streak. Once we got exposed once, it a lot of teams latch onto it, and you kind of have to change yourself, and you're not really that good anymore. You're still great, but you're not at that top level when you're winning week in, week out with ease.
Yeah. What do you make of it, Jack? The comparisons?
I felt like they're two very different teams. I think Arsenal's main strength was they were very difficult to beat, whereas City's
I mean, we had a lot of draws. But we sort of never really looked like losing many of those games. We actually threw away a lot of games in the last few minutes and got silly 1-1 draws. But I think if you put that Arsenal team against the City team, they'd win. But I don't know. What's your perspective on that?
It's very difficult to say because the Premier League's so different now to it was.
Of course, you can only speculate.
14 years ago. I feel like the big thing for me about that Arsenal side was that, as you guys said, that the whole starting 11 was very, very strong. I feel like that's almost it's a little bit harsh to judge City. I feel like City's squad is probably the starting 11 probably isn't as good, but I think in terms of depth, they probably have more strength in depth than Arsenal. Now, actually, to be fair, Arsenal rotated their team quite a lot. I'm trying to think of the invincible team off the top of my head. It'd be like Lehmann in goal. Was it Laurent, a right back?
Laurent,
Toure. Then Lundberg,
Perez, Silva, Vieira, Bergkamp, Henry.
Yeah.
But a lot of those City players, you're right, would definitely get onto the bench. And you'd get a few in the starting 11, possibly.
Yeah, but, I mean, they were pretty lucky to get away with it against Palace. And, in fact, speaking of Palace, they're playing, I think it's tonight, if I'm correct.
FA Cup.
Yeah, and it's the first match with VAR as well.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think it's well overdue, so overdue. I couldn't feel more strongly about it. But I mean, I don't know, guys. What do you guys think?
We've given away 4 penalties this week, right? Arsenal. You could argue 3 of them weren't penalties, right? The West Bromwich Albion one, I'm not even going to get into, just not a penalty. Hazard went down very softly, but I think VAR, you probably give that one, right? Because there was proven to be contact.
Yeah.
The one yesterday wasn't a penalty. The second one, the first one was. The second one wasn't. I don't think he got the ball. But even if it was a penalty, that penalty he struck against his standing foot, and how the referee's not seen it, so he can't give it. But I think VAR. So just for those who aren't aware, the 4 scenarios in which VAR can be used: awarding a goal, deciding whether an offence is worthy of a red card, awarding a penalty, and mistaken identity, which I'm only too familiar with Arsenal Chelsea a couple of years ago. I think for me, I think it will stop absolute howlers from being made, but you're still going to have contentious decisions, in my view. It's not going to completely cleanse the game of them.
Yeah. So Jack, what do you think of VAR then?
I think it depends on the implementation. I've seen a few different ones that have been used across kind of world football. Somewhere it's like an appeal system, somewhere the ref will just, if he has any doubts whatsoever.
Yeah, so those 4 scenarios, they'll check it.
Yeah, I like the fact it's coming into the game. I feel like there is certainly an argument to be made that it's not necessarily the argument I agree with, shall I say. It's a bit of devil's advocate, but mistakes are part of the game. I absolutely detest the whole argument of they all even out, because you could ask Ireland when Henri handballed the ball to get France to World Cup. How is that ever going to even out for Ireland? It's not, funnily enough. You what way you want to take the league season, it doesn't work like that. I think it's good. I feel like it's long overdue.
Well, it's been in other sports, hasn't it? Like football, cricket.
Yeah, that's what it's like.
Sorry, not football, rugby, cricket, tennis.
I think it can only be a good thing to make a referee's job easier. I do feel like you have that risk of, where does the line get ended here? Do we get to a point where every offside decision is just made by a computer? Do you know what I mean?
Stands, they can't. Offside can only be reviewed if leading up to a penalty or a goal. But the thing is, I think eventually it will become sort of any contentious offside might end up getting reviewed, and that's what you don't want to see. You don't want to see sort of this stop-start nature to the game.
Yeah, that's the thing.
That's what you get in rugby a lot, because there's been rugby games that they're meant to take 80 minutes. They've gone on for over 100 because it's stopped so much so often, and for a couple of minutes they go over and over again, and you just totally lose the flow of the game.
Yeah.
Although I think in football one of the best things is the flow. Yeah, go around.
Okay, so I was going to say that one thing to avoid that flow issue with the offsides, particularly, and I think we're capable of doing this now with technology. It's just to get a technology offside like that, like some sort of offside technology in the flag, or like a computerized offside that goes up and down, because that's definitely possible, and you won't have any contentious issues. A bit like goal line technology.
I completely agree. Yeah. I think, listen, I think throughout, the longer this technology will come into the Premier League, there's absolutely no doubt in my mind.
Too long, though.
It has been too long, and there have been some absolute clangers dropped this season. And I'd argue Arsenal have been on, the receiving end of a few, and we've not had the rub of the green.
Of course.
It's not an excuse for our poor performance. But
that's true.
The point I'd make is it will reduce clangers, but I think that as we go on, I think there's going to be so many adaptations made to it that they have to tread carefully and don't, as you mentioned, make it a stop-start sport where not only will the spectators lose interest momentarily, but also what will happen is if you've got momentum and then the game's just stopped for 2 or 3 minutes, you potentially lose that, and it's only detrimental to you. So that's just my view on it. I don't think it's going to solve every decision. Certainly not to begin with.
Yeah, so I think that wraps up the VAR talk, unless anyone has anything else they want to say.
No, I think we've flogged it, to be honest.
Yeah. Okay, so now I haven't said that much, you probably noticed, but we're going to go on to a Q&A now, Jack, with some of the viewers. We've been sending questions. I think, am I right in saying, have you ever done a Q&A before on your channel?
I've done 1 or 2. I did one which I think is now unlisted for maybe 10,000 subscribers. But certainly not in the last years. I feel like I'm quite good at asking questions if people ask me them most of the time. But no, Q&A.
Well, can I say? I've watched a few of your streams. I feel like you get a good idea of kind of the person you are, and you kind of get asked questions during your streams. Do you think that as well? Is that a good way to interact with the audience, you say, during your streams?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, streaming is really, really good. I prefer it to YouTube to an extent, but
that was
That's one of the questions. You've answered it for us.
But it's not quite as well. It's slightly more flexible than videos, but it's a bit more of a commitment. You can't really do a 30-minute stream as easily as I can. When I get in from work, I've worked 9 hours. I can quite easily sit down for half an hour and record a video and then play some FM throughout the evening. Whereas I feel like streaming it, to an extent, it's more convenient if you're not working, just to be able to flick it on whenever and go, I'll go live now for a few hours. Yeah. But in kind of my situation, if I've been working for 9 hours a day, streaming is really exhausting. Like a video is a little bit more relaxed, you kind of know what's going on, whereas with streaming, it's that pressure to remain entertaining constantly for a number of hours. And, you're almost putting on a show. So it can get a little bit draining, but no, I really enjoy streaming because I do think it is a lot more personal in that regard. You can really connect with your audience a lot more.
Do you know what your longest stream you've ever done is, Jack?
Yes, 26 hours.
Oh my goodness.
Was that just you wanted to stream for that long?
No, I think it was a charity stream.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Charity stream.
Right, okay, yeah. You got to respect that.
It's impressive though.
It was a long time ago. I also did a stream with work actually. So at my games company, we have a game jam, which is basically where different developers get together. They make a game in like 48 hours or whatever. And as part of that, I got roped into doing a simultaneous live stream of just various different games that we had, like that we could play in the office. So as part of that, I worked from 7:30 in the morning till 4 in the afternoon, my normal working hours. And then I proceeded to stream from 5 in the afternoon till 11 o'clock the following morning. So I was awake for about 30 hours. That's the worst I think I've ever felt in my life. Like,
oh my goodness.
I remember playing the games at 11 in the morning and I was meant to walk home afterwards and I just fell asleep in my office at work on a Saturday morning. Woke up, completely ruined my sleeping pattern. I will say now though, don't ever play horror games in an area that's not familiar with you with all the lights turned off. Sitting in my office abandoned with all the lights off, playing Amnesia: The Dark Descent might be the most scared I've ever been in my life. Like, it was it was traumatic for me. I don't really like horror games anyway, but that one, pushed me to the edge.
Okay, so our first question is, do you have a favourite football manager out of all the years? Because people favourite different FIFAs, for example, or do you think it just gets better as time's gone on?
I feel like it always gets better. As I said, I struggle to go back to a previous football manager. I think in terms of, I never really get attached to FM. I get more attached to saves.
Yeah,
So,
I'd agree.
The saves that I've kind of gone back to in the past was the FC United Manchester one that I did, which was my first ever save on YouTube back on FM 13. And even Gibraltar Apex, so I still go and play that now. I think I'm in like season 33 or 34.
I love that series, Jack.
Yeah, it's iconic, that is.
Brilliant series.
It's
I
really
just
good.
recommended it to me, and I'm a very big fan of it.
It's so
Yeah,
good.
it's really good.
But keep going.
So I feel like they're the two for me in terms of my favourite FM. I look back with nostalgia. I really like Championship Manager 2004, the one where 2D Match Engine first came in. Just because I think for me it was the first one that I played loads and owned myself, and that was where I really clicked with. I was like, yeah, this is the game that I'm going to play loads of for the rest of my life. I made that conscious decision aged 11 that my life was going to revolve around Football Manager in some form. In terms of recent years, I really liked FM 13. I think because that was the one I played during my second year of university where I first started YouTube. So it's kind of where it all began for me. So it kind of has just a bit of a soft spot in terms of football managers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you obviously play a lot of FM. You love it. What would you say is your greatest achievement on Football Manager?
Oh, gosh. What? That's a really good question that I wish I had. I feel like the obvious one.
Ivan Grinch playing as well as he did. How about that?
I feel like the go-to one is obviously Gibraltar Apex.
That was a fantastic series.
It was really fun. I think the thing that will always kind of make people like less excited by it to an extent was the whole TV deal thing. So for people who don't know, basically in the Gibraltar database for Football Manager, there is a situation where if the league gets to a certain level of popularity and reputation, a big TV deal comes in, and the league basically becomes a super league at that point where each team earns £80 million. So that does make stuff a little bit easier in terms of that whole series. But to get to that point, it's still a massive grind of like repeatedly getting to the group stage of the Champions League. Like you have to work hard to get to that point. And even when you get to that point, I feel like the money isn't just instant success necessarily, like to do stuff. But I feel like to win back-to-back Champions Leagues as a Gibraltarian club, I feel like if you were to phrase it to someone who doesn't understand football much but understands football, that would probably be kind of the most impressive sounding. I think the other one I'd put up there is actually the Wolverhampton Wanderers FM14 save I did, which I streamed, because I started that save off managing Fiorentina, and I was sacked after 6 months.
Oh, yeah, I remember a bit of that, yeah.
And I then went to Wolverhampton Wanderers in League One, where Kenny Jackett had left to go to a Championship club who were struggling, and he got them to second in the league. So I took over Wolves, and as I said earlier, I kind of played that save for about 2 weeks. It was like the 2 weeks of the beta. I just played it, over 10 hours a day, most days, streaming it all for the most part. And I managed to win the league in, I think, about 7 seasons, which isn't actually that great at going, but it's not bad. But in football manager terms, often when I play, I take it really slowly and methodically, whereas when you're streaming, you have that, especially over the summer period, you're constantly hitting continue because you want to get to the end of pre-season. You can't think stuff over a number of days and whatever. So I feel like for me, that was a fun one just because it was kind of interesting stream. I was pretty much getting a season played every day just about, which is mad. But it was kind of funny. You'd have people come into the stream and they'd be like, oh, what season is it now? What did I miss during the 24 hours I've been away? It's like, oh, well, we got to Europe this year and this happened. But I think because I was streaming all of it, because it was over such a short period of time, and because of the fact it was a bit of retribution for being sacked from Fiorentina, that kind of has a soft spot in my heart. There's players like Conor Curry, who kind of spawned Curry Dog. And I had a Chinese goalkeeper called Jai Ming as well, who was called the Great Wall, who was just a monstrous. I don't think I've ever had a good Chinese player since, or seen a player as good as him from China. That was really good as well, because with it all being streamed, with it being on the beta, it was just kind of really special to me, I guess, because you really get attached to your FM shows. I'm sure you guys are the same. You spend hundreds of hours potentially into them. And I think because it was all done the way it was done, it definitely has a soft spot for me. It's kind of one of my achievements. It might not be the greatest in terms of the spectacle of it all, but it was just fun to do.
Okay. So, also, Jack, you are a YouTuber. Who would you say your favourite YouTuber is, or at least one that you really enjoy to watch?
Oh gosh,
apart from our YouTube channel, of course.
I feel like I need to open my subscriptions here and look at who I watch. I'm one of these people who people would be really surprised if I get the videos that I like to watch. So I really like Copper 90. With all the football stuff they do. I'm quite big into my esports and competitive gaming. So years ago I used to shoutcast COD 4, for example, so long ago now. It's kind of just a different lifetime ago. But there's still people who I kind of work with there and follow from there. So I'm quite into kind of just watching competitive gaming as a whole. Those kind of podcasts I'm always interested in. True Geordie podcast obviously is a good one.
The inspiration behind this.
So no, I feel like I'm quite like just long form videos where I can just kind of listen along, rather than watching videos. Exactly. But it's really difficult. I feel like there's lots of YouTubers I watch. I wouldn't say I necessarily get super attached to loads of channels. What I would say is I probably don't watch that much Football Manager anymore, which might surprise people. But I feel like when you're playing the game as much as I have played it over the last few years, and I spent 5 years doing videos, the last thing I want to do actually is watch more Football Manager, which might sound really odd. That might sound big-headed to some people, because I know there's a lot of FM YouTubers who love watching more FM YouTube. But for me, the hours I put into it, having worked on Football Manager as well, I've seen a lot of Football Manager in my life, and I feel like actually the point where I stopped watching FM on YouTube was when I was working at Football Manager. You spend 9 hours a day playing the game, you walk home, spend another 2 hours doing a video for the day. The last thing I wanted to do then was watch more Football Manager to make more than half my day dedicated.
Yeah, I can understand that, definitely.
And I feel like it's kind of continued from there, really. Actually, that kind of just that habit of not watching quite so much anymore.
I mean, I know I'm the same. I wouldn't want to. I mean, given how much time you spend on it and around it, just the whole life must kind of revolve around it. I mean, watching other people doing it, I guess must get a bit repetitive for you.
He doesn't need any tips anyway. He's an expert.
Yeah.
Speaking of tips, we'd quite like one, Jack. Please, can you tell us who do you think the best wonder kid is on this Football Manager? That's another question we've had sent in.
This year's. Oh gosh.
That's from. Sorry, we've got to shout this lad out. He's a big fan of yours. George Brinley, the dog, as we nickname him. He's a big fan of yours, Jack. was keen that we asked you that question.
The dog. I feel like there's a story there behind that nickname. I'm not going to
It
ask.
certainly is.
But, Wonder Kid this year. There's a few good ones. Oh gosh, to pick out one. See, I could just go. Just go really boring and. I genuinely don't know. It's going to sound a little bit odd because this year I've not played quite as much, like new save wise, and like looking at really good Wonder Kids. Moise Keane is very good at Juventus, and sometimes they let him go cheap if they don't develop him. So I'll say him.
Oh,
Yeah.
Sorry,
Thank you very much. I'll be picking him up.
Just cracking up about what you said about our friend. He'll love that. He's a big fan of yours.
Right, next question, Mars.
Okay. So the next question is, I'm just getting it up now. It is, what is the future of YouTube and your channel?
That's quite an interesting one. So I'll be honest, for the last few years, I've not really envisaged a future for my channel, which might sound really odd and really peculiar, so I feel like I should explain this. But I feel like some people start YouTube because they want to do it full time. Some people start it because they want to do it for fun and they have some free time. Which the same reason you guys might have started this podcast is because you want to, you have some free time. You want to discuss some stuff you don't get to discuss elsewhere, and it's kind of a fun creative project to be part of. When I started my channel, obviously I had a lot more free time. I wasn't working full time. I never ever started my channel with the intention of going, yes, I'm going to do Football Manager videos full time. And to this day, I still don't feel like that would ever be something that I'd necessarily want to do, which might sound a little bit strange to some people. In terms of the future of my channel, I want to keep the content going. I've kind of come to this kind of peace moment in my head at some point, down the line, there is going to come a point where I just call it a day, because at the end of the day, I am always doing Football Manager videos for fun. I've had extended breaks in the past, and I feel like I'm fortunate to be in a situation where, YouTube isn't my full-time job. It's not something that I have to invest my life to. It's something that I do because I find it fun, and, it's something that I enjoy spending my free time doing. And if it ever gets to the point where I'm not going to enjoy it, I think the content would suffer and I'd want to stop. At the moment, at least, I'm continuing to enjoy doing videos. I'm enjoying playing Football Manager still, so I don't intend to stop. But yeah, for me, the future of my channel, when I started my channel, the future of my channel was basically I need to get a job in the games industry. I've done that now. And so for me, the next logical goal with my channel would be to take it full time, but that's not necessarily something that I even want to do. And so I'm someone who's quite motivated by goals. So really my goal at the moment is just to entertain people.
Yep.
For how long that motivation keeps going, I don't know. I've had burnout periods in the past. I feel like that's fairly natural. And some people, they'll push through the burnout. Sometimes people just take a break for a week or two. I could take a break forever if I wanted to, realistically. But at least at the moment, I enjoy entertaining people. People are enjoying what I'm doing. I feel like I've got a bit of a second wind on this year's Football Manager in terms of there's a lot more people watching and enjoying the series that I'm working on at the moment with Sochaux in France.
Yeah, the youth one.
Yeah, and
that was good.
Yeah, just going to kind of continue doing what I'm doing until I decide that I'm not enjoying it anymore.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear.
And you are entertaining. Can I just say, I found you because these guys, they put it on a group chat. It was Rohan, so if you might want to thank him for this. He was like, you've got to check out this guy. And I watched all the Advent Calendar series in May in 2016, and I've loved this year's. The Advent Calendar series for me is just great. That's my favourite series.
I feel like it's nice to just do something where it's a little bit more laid back, a little bit more kind of chilled. I feel like Football Manager is a game that everyone plays really seriously. I'm certainly guilty of that.
Yeah,
I want to win everything. Whereas having something that's a little bit of fun, it's a little bit quirky and different, and I can kind of laugh at my own expense when I inevitably screw up.
We love the nicknames.
The nicknames are so good.
Darren Rudolph. Darren Rudolph. What was going on with him, Jack? He didn't perform very well for you.
I'm still bitter about that. I still call him Rudolph when I see him on TV. It's a bit of a problem actually at this point.
We just think of it straight away. All right, so I think one more question, which we got actually comes from us. Do you want to do an FM draft with us at some point?
I mean, I've got a terrible, terrible reputation to uphold. I feel like after the Football Manager Cup, Content Cup that I was involved in with the creators, I'm sure I could find time to batter some of you guys at a game of Jack.
Well, we did say we'd be scared of you tearing us apart.
I feel like there's nothing to be fearful of for me. I feel like my draft reputation this year is in tatters, so it can't get worse. I've not got a lot to lose by accepting that offer.
Oh, fantastic. We'll definitely take you up on that then.
So again, thanks very much, Jack, for coming on, mate. We really appreciate your time. I'm sure some of our listeners who are actually fans of you will do as well. Or I think anyone that has any sort of interest in Football Manager or football or YouTube or gaming will find this podcast really interesting and really insightful. So yeah, thank you for that. And if you guys have any feedback on this podcast, any of the last podcasts that we've done, which you can find on the SoundCloud and the YouTube, feel free to contact us on any of the socials in the description. But also, we now have emails. You can get in touch with us directly. So if you just take our names, so that's Rohan, Harry, Miles, Christian or Angus, and use them and put at lbppodcast.com, you can leave any feedback or suggestions you have for future guests or topics for the podcasts. So yeah, thank you very much for listening. I hope you all enjoyed.
No worries. I appreciate you guys inviting me on. It was good to be part of this podcast in its early stages.
Good. Yeah, well, hopefully we'll grow from here. And were you going to advertise it on your social media? I'm sure some people will check that out from there. Obviously, we'll put it on our and everything. So yeah, I think we'll end there. Thank you very much, Jack, for coming on.
No worries. Thank you for having me.